Hey there! Welcome to the Cobra Convergence special from Articulated Points. Now, the prompt of course being Cobras, we felt we kind of wanted to go back to the comic Boom Boom release from the Japanese manga from 1986. Since we released that video, we've asked around and we figured out that the villain in the issue I have is named Gaia. And here he is, right again, as a reminder. And he creates this earthquake machine called the Maglatron, which we think may be a play on the Japanese onomatopoeia for the sound of an earthquake. Well, I figured it would be fun if we made Gaia real. Now, okay, yeah, I'm going to show us side by side here. He's not quite right. Some of the smaller details aren't matching up, but, you know, I'm thinking of this as like the mock-up figure you might see in a catalog. That's a prototype of an action figure that doesn't quite match the released figure. It's sort of, you know, taking existing parts and painting them in a way that kind of resembles what the final figure is supposed to be. It'd be really cool if all of these companies we're seeing putting out O-ring figures actually made this guy in 3D. Hint, hint. Here's my best effort at putting together a Gaia, complete with his accessories, the silver shiny shield, the weird sword cattle prod thing, and cables going into his backpack as well as into the back of his head, because there is one shot that shows his cybernetic head is plugged into his backpack. His uniform design, kind of plain. I admit, you know, it's not as visually as appealing as I'd like, so I tried to make it pop more with the colors. The silver shirt tying into what was obviously chrome on the shield and maybe chrome on his head electronics. And then kind of a cobra blue pants with some black highlights. The idea is these figures came out in '86 in Japan, but they're mostly 83 to 85-ish releases, so just trying to keep in that range of designs, so you know what a released toy from that period would feature, so we don't get too crazy on the paint apps, just sort of like 3 different main colors aside from the flesh tone. Body parts that wouldn't look too out of place in that period, but still sort of keeping the design. Head from Robo-Joe, because he's the only cybernetic head that kind of was released in the vintage era. The torso is a copperhead where I ground down and removed the shoulder holster. Arms are actually from Muskrat. You can see he kind of has a little bit of gauntlet work. It's still, again, the designs aren't quite matching, but you know, when you think of like the animation model of a character versus its toy, things were simplified or details were changed around, you know, we're playing off of that. The waist is actually from, I believe, Backblast. The upper legs come from Dr. Mindbender, and the lower legs are actually, I believe, from Psych Out. He's got some nice straps going on the buckles, which kind of matches the detail on the boots in the manga. The shield, actually modified from a Supersonic Fighter Psych Out. So my original thought was to use an old Captain America shield from a Marvel Legends Superhero Showdown figure. Unfortunately, I didn't have the extra shield anymore. But I did have the Psych Out satellite dish. And on the inside of the dish is like a little electrical box. And that sort of calls back to details found in the manga. I did still retain the clamp for the missile launcher to attach the shield to Gaia's arm. And his stun gun cattle prod sword thing, the details are from the tip, and the handle come from a core version of Dr. Mindbender's probe. The main shaft is based off of a Hasbro WWF Mountie stun gun with a little Lego radar dish for the handguard. Piecing together, kit bashing, it's a part of the prototyping process, if you will, getting that, you know, concept into 3D at the bare minimum, and then, you know, more talented people take over at that point. What can I say? It's how the process works, right? Beyond that, I think that the appeal of this figure comes into with his accessories. You know, you got the Laser Viper backpack here, works best for the design. You not only do you have the places to plug in the cables from the shield and the sword, but there's also holes on top so I can put a plug into his head as well. And I just drilled that hole on in there. And I'm kind of proud of how he came out. I know the colors were just sort of made up because he's a made-up character over in the manga, so I have no idea what the author intended him to look like. But we're going to go with it. Gaia, Japanese manga. Alright, I'm going to throw it over to Patrick now because he's got something he wants to show you as well.
Hey, thanks, Philip. It's not every day that you see a good use for that Robo-Joe head, is it?
Oh.
The fact that it has the old-style body construction on the neck, I think really made it blend in with those older parts in the O-Ring line, which made it mesh in with the other figures that were released in Japan. So I think you did a really great job. Okay, so for my half of this project, I was picking a character that appears in the second to the last issue, which was from January 1987. And the name of the character that I'm working on, thanks to Philip having it translated, is Bomber Jack. Not really what I would have expected, but I don't know what I was expecting. I really had a hard time deciding on the color for him because with the fact that we don't actually have every issue in hand yet, and there may be supplemental material that appeared either before or after the actual 6-issue story, I kind of am wondering if out there may actually exist something from them that would actually show what colors these characters should be. Yeah, this issue's interesting. It kind of starts with Firefly breaking somebody out of prison. But there is a bit of a chase from the Joes to prevent this character from getting out of jail. But I'm not going to give away the ending. Here is the figure that I created. Some of the details came out a little bit better than I thought. Some of them didn't come out as well as I had hoped. And it kind of started with the upper left arm from Maverick. That's where this whole thing started to gain momentum. I used a lot of green stuff in this process, but I used a lot of blue stuff. Now I know that those terms sound technical, blue stuff and green stuff, but those are actually the actual names of them. Green stuff also is known by Neatatite with a K. And right here you can see that I've pulled out that same Voltar shoulder that is from the mold that I actually used to put that same Voltar shoulder detail on the figure that you see. So it's not a Voltar torso, I just was able to pull that detail off and graft it onto another figure. The first thing that I actually did that with was the shoulder detail, because ideally I would have liked to have used 2 Maverick shoulders from his left shoulder, because his right shoulder doesn't have that same set of cylinders all around it. It's only on the left shoulder. And then his forearms are actually covered in the wrist rockets from Destro. I molded and copied the wrist rockets from Destro's right arm several times onto both forearms. Then I did a little bit of sculpting detail on his legs. I pulled some detail, if you could tell what that is, on his right leg from another figure, and a little bit from his left leg, actually. I don't know if you'll recognize that or the items on his chest. But you may, if you have a really sharp eye, because not only would you have to be capable of identifying these shapes, you'd have to be capable of identifying these shapes after they've been molded in blue stuff and then made out of green stuff, which isn't the best way of making these. But there's some things on this one that I'm not entirely happy with that I would redo, and I kind of justify that with the color, knowing that I probably could make it a little more wild. I was really thinking about some yellows and some reds, but I know how painting yellow is on top of things, and I wasn't brave enough to try to paint yellow over something in a 2-week period, not knowing that I could pick whatever colors I wanted, and technically that would be okay. So in the future, if I were to try this again, I think that I would try for brighter colors. And the one thing I'm really hoping for, especially since these things aren't colored, is to see some ideas from the community. I would like to see some more customs of these figures, but if you're not going to do that, just grab one of the pages that we post and maybe digitally color it to kind of give us an idea of what you would have done in color. And you know, a lot of what both of us were doing felt very appropriate, since Takara was so encouraging of customs and creativity through their approach to the G.I. Joe brand. I think the 1987 Takara catalog has some custom figures in it that we've talked about before. But then I also noticed that in the issue of the manga that you had Gaia from, that there were some customs in there. It looks like a vamp that has been customized in this color section in the front. And then in the back of the book, there's actually some contest winners, is what it appears to be. And there are a bunch of designs in there from some kids. And there's a really cool powered up Timber that kind of reminds me of that segment we had a long time ago from Action Man. And there's just some other vehicles and some other cool things in here. So it really seems that Takara was leaning into encouraging kids to do customs with G.I. Joes anyway. And before we go, let's just go ahead and take a look at these figures next to each other. I think they actually kind of work as a bit of a duo due to the fact that we chose similar colors, but again, those colors are very Cobra colors, so they were going to work together no matter what. And it is a little weird having mine right next to yours because I think that I was just very focused on the torso and the arms on mine.
Well, I focus more on the accessories on mine, you know. Bomber Jack has a more involved design, but he doesn't really hold much, does he?
Well, in the manga, he did have a missile that is launched by hand, kind of by throwing it, and then it takes off. I tried sculpting it, but it really was not looking right, so that's still on the back burner. So that does it. For the full list of all the Cobra Convergence 6 contributors, visit hcc788.com, and there should be a wrap-up show, I believe, tomorrow on Hooded Cobra Commander 788's YouTube channel. And, you know, go back and take a look at some of those old videos. I've been enjoying doing so myself and enjoyed the event so far. And hopefully you liked this show. And if you did, like, share, and subscribe. And we will see you later.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching this episode of Articulated Points. We hope you enjoyed it. And we'd appreciate it if you would like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to learn more about some of the toys featured in this episode or want to follow us on social media, links are in the description below this video.